Yo, what is going on, guys? You already know what time it is. It is that time for the new BT13 versus Royal Knights competitive tier list. So as always, I'm going to be kind of going over which decks I think are going to be the best. Tier 1, 1.5-ish, basically almost competitive. You might see them at a regional level. Tier 2, probably only good for locals. And then Rogue, just pretty much not playable, or maybe kind of cool if depending on how the meta shifts. But that's going to kind of be my breakdown. So let's go ahead and kind of get into the different decks in the set. And as always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If there's any decks I missed or any of the ones you think I misjudged, let me know, because obviously I've done some testing and stuff, but this is just solely based on my opinion. It doesn't have to be the definitive answer. So guys, let's go ahead and get into it with Alphamon as the first deck. So Alphamon did actually get a new Digivolution line in set 13. Not only do we have the new Alphamon that basically floodgates your opponent from attacking with 10 cost or higher Digimon, but you also get what I would say is the most important piece, is the new Doru Gray. The new Doru Gray is really crazy. I can probably pull it up for you guys. It basically lets you, it kind of has a Grademon effect on Evolve, where you look at top 3 and stick something under, and then the end of turn is what's really crazy, because this pairs really well with Oryugen. Arguably this card is even better than the previous Doru Greymon. Now maybe that's up for debate. Obviously that one lets you OTK way more easy. But this card's really crazy, so I will have to put Alphamon in the tier 1 category. I really think this deck is very competitive, and it's also really good into a lot of the current strong decks. The one most people are hyped about being Shine Greymon. Not being able to reduce the DP is pretty dang annoying with this card. Not only does the old Doru Greymon give you that one, but this also has basically the same effect. So really crazy stuff. I think Alphamon's pretty sane. Armor Rush is a kind of really interesting deck that's kind of come back to the forefront a little bit. If any of you guys have seen Huang Zero's Armor Control video, that deck is really cool. Plays of course the armor cards as well as Black Seraphimon and a lot of the other kind of yellow control cards. I think this deck is decent. Is it tier 1-ish? Absolutely not. I'd put it in tier 2. Like, it's playable. Magnamon X is still a really cool card. You have access to Awakening of the Golden Knight, which again into the Shine Greymon matchup, not being able to reduce the DP is pretty insane, and then you just basically force redirects into Magnamon X every time they swing with the Marcus or something. So I think it can be pretty decent. The Leopardmon deck, as a standalone deck, I don't really see this deck doing really too much. They do have a lot of really cool support in the form of the Leopardmon, as well as the Leopardmon Leopard mode. This card basically gets to attack an additional time for each one of your own Digimon, basically suspending each of them to unsuspend itself, and then you basically then get to trash this card, going back into the regular Leopardmon, unsuspend all your Digimon, and then they all have blocker. The problem is it loses to like a single Death X, or Shine Greymon and Mirage have really efficient removal cards, so I don't really think this deck is going to be pretty strong. I'm going to put this in Rogue. I honestly haven't really tested it out too much, but I can't see it being really crazy. Beelzemon still, I would say, probably the strongest purple deck. I know we got Belphemon, we'll kind of get to that in a second, but Beelzemon X, still a crazy card. The Star Deck Beelzemon, the Warp Impmon, still all legal at 4. The only thing that slows this deck down is the EX2 Impmon. But realistically, even in BT12 and EX4 when this card got hit, I still think it was tier 1. I'm going to put this in 1.5. I think it has a lot of still really crazy plays. I think you can still steal games with stuff like Beelzemon X and the Blast mode. But I think there are a lot of decks that have answers to it. One of them being Alphamon being able to prevent their Beelzemons from attacking, Shine Greymon being able to heal a lot and being able to deal with their board pretty efficiently, and then Mirage having the bounce triggers to be able to, kind of clear them without triggering the on deletions. Speaking of purple decks, let's talk about Belphemon. My man Belphemon here is a really cool kind of strategy focusing around the Belphemon sleep mode as well as the rage mode. You basically go sleep into rage, and that's GG. This card is really cool because it basically becomes unaffected for a turn, and it puts your opponent on a literal clock, because once this effect resolves and you trash the top card, well, underneath the sleep mode you've got the rage mode, which is basically a 17k for checking Behemoth. Like, this card is pretty crazy, provided you get the setup. But this deck is kind of inconsistent, a little bit memory inefficient, and kind of relies on your opponent not knowing what the cards do, because once they know what the cards do, it's really not that difficult to be able to clear their board. Or, I mean, you won't be able to clear the Belphemont sleep mode, but like, let's say you know they got a rage mode, you know they need another Digimon to be able to unsuspend it, you just clear all their other Digimon, and it dies to a singular option security. So I don't know, I really don't think the deck is that good. It's respectable though, like, you still have to... I mean, I don't know, maybe 1.5-ish. I can see this getting a top here and there. I would definitely put it on the low end of that. Maybe, I might put it in tier 2. I don't know. You do have access to Psychmon, though, which is really crazy into Royal Knights. So I'm just leave it in 1.5 for now to appease all my purple viewers. The next, let's go into Bloomlord. This deck, I think, is an easy 1.5. High 1.5, maybe lowish tier 1. You've got nothing but really powerful support over the past couple sets. You still have Bloomlord, you still have Hydramon, and you've got indirect support with the Rosemon cards, which are actually just better Bloomlord cards than they are like Rosemon cards. You got a new Lalamon that searches not only your Tamer but any of your plants. You've got a Sunflamon that basically lets you Digivolve into a fairy for -2, and if you've got a green Tamer with Lalamon, that's for -3, is pretty crazy. And of course you've got the Burst mode, which isn't quite as crazy as Quartzmon, but being able to evolve this for 0 and basically getting a mini Quartz effect for that turn is pretty crazy. So I think it has a lot going for it. I'm going to put Bloom in like high 1.5. Like right next to Beelzemon, these are very competitive decks. I just don't want to put too many in tier 1, because I've kind of heard your guys' feedback a lot of times. I just kind of stick way too many decks in tier 1, and the kind of definition of tier 1 should be just like the most effective tactic available, right? It's the meta decks, the decks that are winning tournaments, the decks to play, the decks to beat. Okay, so I think Bloom's still a really, really powerful deck. I'm going to keep it in 1.5. Blue Flare. This deck got a lot of cool support in EX4. If you've been watching the channel recently, I uploaded some Blue Flare gameplay. I think this deck is really, really strong, really fast, but I think it does rely on your opponent to kind of be playing into it. If they only ever keep one Digimon on board, you never get the freeze effect from Mailbird, you never get the unsuspend from the Greymon. Now you do still have access to the Sec Attack Greymon as well as Metal Grey X, so you can still do some damage with those cards as well, and freezing is still a really strong mechanic. But versus Shine, who's got Tamers that go back, or Digimon that go back into Tamers the next turn, so they kind of dodge your effects. Or Mirage that kind of gets around your material save, or something in that Bloom like can bottom deck your guys with Hydramon, so it's really, really difficult to deal with. I'm going to also put this in 1.5. Really strong deck, but I don't think it's going to be doing anything crazy anytime soon. Then next we got Chaosdramon, what was arguably the biggest like menace of the BT12 like ulti-cut format, or just honestly just the regular format in general. A really only bad matchup being Hunters. This deck is so... Man, this is a deck. It reminds me of Black War Greymon in the sense that it is just an absolute behemoth, absolute unkillable stack, really crazy removal effects, and being able to just deal with the boards is really insane. The problem is I don't think this deck is really good into a deck like Royal Knights, which puts up a lot of really big Digimon, doesn't really care about the devolve. I don't think it's really good into stuff like Shine Grey, because Shine Grey has the 5 and 4 cost Tamers that dodge your Gigadramon removal. The only thing being the Machine Dramon that can't have its DP reduced, I think can make this still competitive. Not being able to be bounced is still really strong, so honestly this deck is still really, really good. Is it tier 1? I honestly would still probably put this deck in tier 1. I'm going to put this low tier 1. This might be really controversial, but I still honestly think its only really bad matchup is like Hunters, and even then, if you see your Gigadramon early enough, and if you can set up a blocker and they don't hit Analog Man and your security, I think you're cooking. Like, this deck is still really good. Alphamon, you've got Digivolve. For Mirage, you can't be bounced. Shine Greymon, you've got the DP, can't be DP reduced Machine Dramon. Maybe that becomes like a 2 or 3 of in this format, I'm not sure. But I still think the potential for tier 1 status is there. So I'm going to go ahead and put Machine/Chaos Dramon in tier 1. And then next we got everyone's favorite deck for some reason. I don't know why this is such a fan favorite deck. You guys let me know what it is about D Brigade that people like so much. Is it just like the cute doggos with guns? Like, I don't understand, but like, not to say I don't like the deck because it's kind of cool. One of my friends way back in the day won a regional with D Brigade, so it does hold a special place in my heart. But I've never really a huge like fan of it. But anyways, that's besides the point. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this in Rogue. Like, there's no way that this deck is copable anytime soon. At least until, what is it, set 14, when we get like the new Black Tamer and then all the new the D Police cards and stuff like that. So those cards will be really good. When those cards come out, I will easily put this deck in tier 1. That deck is crazy when those cards come out. But for now, Commander Mon is just going to have to be in Rogue tier. Examon, I don't think this deck has done anything for a while. Really bad into Mirage and Shine. Alpha, you've got Devolve. I'll probably just put this in like Rogue-ish. Like, even into Bloom, you have a bad matchup. Blue Flare, they outspeed you. Beelzemon, they outspeed you. I don't think Xmon's really doing anything. Same thing with Galacticmon, man. This is such a cool mechanic, like just being able to protect your stack from basically anything. Having like a 14k level 6 that like trashes security, you're a blocker and stuff. This deck's terrible. I don't know if this deck will ever be good. Let me know if you're a Galacticmon coper, but I'm not a believer, man. Like, that deck belongs in the garbage. Gallantmon, man, I was just talking to one of my friends about Gallantmon the other day, how it is crazy how this deck gets support like literally every set or every 2 sets, and it is just still terrible. Like, this is the elemental heroes of Digimon. Like, this deck is a fan favorite. It's an anime deck. People love it. Really aggressive, really like just big guys that can slap your security pretty hard. But it's just so bad. Like, I don't know why. In theory, it's so good. You have so much board clear. You have the ability to warp into megas. Like, it's a really cool deck. This is just going to stay in tier 2 category, even with the new Gallantmon. And I do think the new Gallantmon is pretty insane. It offers you a lot of different plays in the Gallantmon deck, and honestly in Royal Knights as well. I'm just going to keep it in tier 2. Like, it is not really doing too much of anything. Just by itself, like the deck is just still not good. Now, Mirage Gaugamon, this deck I would probably argue is one of the sleepers of the set. I don't think I've seen too many people talking about it, but I honestly think this is one of the best decks in the game. I'm going to put it easy tier 1. It reminds me of Metal Gurumon. Like, this deck, if you've tested it out at all, it's basically just like swing on suspend, bounce a guy, swing on suspend. Like, it is very piece reliant. It's very fragile. It's a glass cannon, dies to one thing in security, so maybe that might gatekeep it a little bit if you hit something like a Wyverns or a Final Shining Burst or a Rival's Barrage or Attack of the Heavy Mobile Digimon. I don't know. Like, if you hit a singular option security, you're cooked. But you've got a lot of utility. You've got, like, bouncing cards has always been good. You can gain memory off that. The BT11 Mirage is still a really crazy card. Being able to gain memory on both players' turns is pretty disgusting. And the burst mode just ends games on its own. Like, it's a solid deck. I like it a lot. Wargrey, or I'll just say Wargrey / Black Wargrey, just, it honestly feels like at this point they've kind of just meshed into one. Like, I've seen a lot of lists that are playing like 2 of the Raid Wargrey, and then like 2 Black War, and then like 2 Black War X, and Gaiamon's occasionally in there. And then now that we've got Wargreymon Ace legal for BT13, don't really know how that's going to shift up the meta, but I think you've still got a lot of things going for you, similar to Machine Dramon, where you've got a lot of protection from bouncing and deletion, and you've even got DP reduction effects protection with the Metal Greymon X from BT11, is it? So you can kind of, I think, build this as a toolbox deck versus kind of whatever is popular in the meta. I still think it's really good. Like, Hades Force is still a crazy card. I'm going to go ahead and put this, like, high tier 1.5-ish, like, right next to, I'd say, Bloom and Beelzemon. Honestly, let me kind of, like, move these down. I'm going to put Blue Flare and Belphemon like high tier 2, just because I kind of want to differentiate between 1.5 and 2, just to say like 1.5 still really strong meta contenders, not the most competitive decks, not the decks to beat, but we'll still top a regional here and there, whereas tier 2 is probably not doing anything crazy anytime soon. So yeah, Warg I still think is really good. Hunters, this deck I think like, honestly has not lost any sort of steam or traction whatsoever. R-Star Digimon Superior Mode is still a crazy unfair card. Like, why is there this crazy of a removal effect on a level 5 Digimon? I just don't understand. Like, I get it, it's not generic, you can only play it in the Hunter's deck, you need the setup, you need like 2 or 3 Tamers on field with different colors. That's honestly not really that hard to get, especially because you've got so many cards that free plays Tamers. You play like 20 of them, and so if your opponent hits 1 security, you're already like tucking level 5s and 6s, and there's literally no way to get around that effect unless you're playing specifically Galacticmon or Alter S, and if you're playing those decks, you're losing against Hunters anyways. So I'm gonna definitely just put Hunters in tier 1. Like, I still think this deck is really, really crazy, being able to get around a lot of different removal effects and just having the tempo and consistency to kind of compete at a regional and a national level. I think this deck is still really crazy. Imperial Dramon, this deck's really cool. Fortunately, not doing anything. Like, even with the BT11 support, that deck was just like not good, which is kind of crazy to say because this deck was a menace back in BT8, if you guys remember. But yeah, anyways, this deck is gonna stay in Rogue. Jesmon did actually get some new cards. They got a new evolution line in BT13. I really haven't tested those ones out too much, but just on paper they seem really good. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, so we got basically they let you digivolve, like kind of free evolve into your line. Basically, like when you would play Sistermon, they all trigger. So Bao Huck evolves into Savior, Huck evolves into Bao, and then you've got a new Jesmon as well. I don't really think this Jesmon's like that good, except in the Royal Knights deck. But the old Jesmons will do the job. You're just still trying to do the same thing, spam the board, put a bunch of blockers up, and OTK your opponent, kind of. So I still think the deck's pretty decent, especially with the new support. I'm going to probably put this in high tier 2. I could be proven wrong with this. Like, I'm totally open to being wrong about Jesmon, but I don't think it's quite there yet as a competitive deck, at least not anymore. But you might see it do some damage every once in a while. Now we got the yellow-black deck, so we got the chess deck. This deck is hot garbage, bro. Like, it's a kind of a cool concept, I guess, like, thematically. Alright, you've got, like, all your chess pieces, you've got, like, the pawns, and then you've got, like, you got 2 different pawns, actually. So I actually didn't even notice that until I was opening a box. There's 2 pawn chessmons, so you've got 8, like, pawns, which is, like, the same as, like, a regular, like, if you're playing a game of chess, right, you got 8 pawns. So that's kind of side note that I thought was kind of a cool, like, flavor kind of touch. So you got pawns, you got your knights, you got bishop, king, and queen somewhere, I think, in them black cards as well. But it's just not good, man. Like, this deck is so bad. It literally does nothing. They just float. Like, all the deck does is just float into other chess mons. I mean, it's kind of cool and gimmicky, but this is just going in Rogue. Same thing with King Sukamon. I haven't even read half the new support. I'm not even going to bother to. I'm just putting in Rogue. This deck is not doing anything, alright? No, I will not let anyone tell me otherwise. Merva Cross, I still think, Merva Loop, I guess. This deck is still really, really strong, being able to put up multiple blockers, being able to have access to the floodgates like Gazi and Cyclone and stuff. This is tough. I don't know. I think you probably have a bad time into a lot of the tier 1 decks, and honestly probably a lot of the 1.5. So let's put this high tier 2. I still think Merva itself, like Merva herself, is still a crazy card. But maybe just the other support isn't there yet. Like, you haven't gotten retaliation support since BT11. I'm not quite sure, but I think the cards at core level is still pretty solid. Ravemon, this deck is just not copable at all, man. I'm putting this in Rogue. Like, you got the new support, you got a new Ravemon, you got a new evolution line, you got a new burst mode. This deck is just so bad. I don't know how they fumbled so hard with Ravemon burst mode. Like, Mirage is a better hand loop deck than Ravemon. It's so bad, dude. Like, don't even, like, I'm sorry to all Ravemon's fans out there, because I actually wanted to kind of try out the deck, and I might mess around with it here and there, like maybe at locals or something, but this deck is just so bad. Like, you can't, having a boss monster that's sole purpose is just to kill itself, like, honestly, it sounds kind of cool on paper. You can dodge all these removal effects and security, and your opponent can attack into this, and then you just get like 2 Ravemons the next turn. But it's so bad, bro. It's terrible. Red Hybrid, I still think this deck is really crazy. I'm gonna put this high 1.5. You still have really good matchups all around. You're still a really, really powerful aggro deck, but you're bad into a lot of the tier 1 decks. I think you're bad into Machine Dramon, you're bad into Mirage. Shine can be 50-50. I think they can outlast you a little bit, and they can clear boards pretty efficiently. So I'm going to go ahead and put Red Hybrid High Tier 1.5. Like, honestly, a lot of the BT12, BT11 decks are still really, really strong, but just kind of shifted down a little bit, or I'd say kind of like on par, maybe a little bit less than the current BT13 decks. Red Raid, Marsmon, the Bird, Phoenixmon deck, this is just bad. I'm not even going to talk about that. Rosemon, this deck is maybe copable, but I was playing a couple sets with my buddy last night on Rosemon. Honestly, like, the Rosemon support, just play it in Bloomlore and you'll have a better time. Like, this deck's terrible. Like, even the new Rosemon, like, it's halfway decent. Like, it's kind of cute. Okay, your opponent swings with the Digimon. You suspend another one of their Digimon on their turn. Like, that's all it does. It's so bad, man. I just don't think this deck is any good. It's just better Bloomlore support. Venusmon / Set Control. This deck's pretty strong. I think you do need to respect Set Control this format, because there are a lot of decks that hard lose to a Wyvern Breath and Security or a Chaos Dag or a Lonky. Like, look, if you look at all the tier 1 decks, and a lot of the 1.5 decks I'd listed except maybe Red Hybrid and Peelzmon, those are the only ones I would say have favorable SetCon matchups. Most of the other decks can struggle doing damage if you're healing every single turn and if you've got like 3 or 4 security bombs in your security stack. So I honestly will put SetCon at like a mid to high 1.5. Like, I would not be surprised if this actually comes back this format, just because there are so many of the 1.5 and tier 1 decks that can struggle into SetCon players. And maybe because it's been a while, we might see that people aren't accustomed to playing against SetCon as much during tournaments or whatever, so they might make more misplays, so SetCon might end up topping more. Who knows? I'm excited to see, but SetCon's kind of one of those decks that's just always been around and probably will always be around, at least until the end of this game. So I'm going to put it in 1.5. Shine Greymon, I've been kind of alluding to this basically the entire video, but I'm going to put this in a strong tier 1. We kind of expected that, right? You've got, on paper, you've got so many really cool things going for you. You've got Rise Greymons that free play out your Marcus and that recover you one anytime one of your Marcus is deleted. You've got the Geo Greymon that free plays a Marcus from security. Let me clarify that. It doesn't add it to your hand. It plays it with the on play from security. We've got a lot of new support that kind of help out with killing your opponent. Stuff like Shine Greymon Burst Mode. You can a lot of times kill your opponent from 3 or 4 security. Being able to play out a Marcus with Rush. Get its like on attack basically, like gaining the memory off of the BT13 Marcus, or free Digivolving off of the BT12 Marcus. And speaking of free Digivolving, BT12 Marcus is still really, really crazy. Being able to just evolve into any yellow Greymon, whether it be level 4, 5, 6, or 7 for free, is pretty crazy. So anyways, yeah, we've got Shine Greymon tier 1. I don't think there really needs to be much said about that. Really good defensively, really good offensively, just overall really crazy deck. Ulforce Vidramon, a deck very near and dear to my heart. I think this is probably still a decent deck. I think Mirage, similar to Melga back in the day, is just a little bit more efficient at doing the same thing, just bouncing things and attacking multiple times. So I'm going to probably put this in 1.5, just because I do think it's still really strong. Ulforce X, being able to bounce off on your opponent's turn is pretty cool, but there's just a lot of decks that do the same thing better. Crossheart, still really strong. I honestly think Crossheart's probably still like 1.5. Like, people have not been playing this deck at all, and I think it's just gotten stronger. Like, you still got your Cross 7, you've still got Cross 7 Superior Mode. Nothing in your deck is hit outside of Cross, what is it, 3 or 4? The 1-cost Unsuspended Tamer guy, draw 2. Like, aside from that card, you pretty much got Crossheart at full power. Obviously, you auto-lose to certain matchups, like maybe Black or Gray. You got a hard time against stuff like Machine Dramon, not being able to like deal with the redirects and stuff, but I think overall you're still a pretty decent deck. You can outspeed a lot of decks. And then lastly, let's talk about the Royal Knights deck, King Drazel and the Royal Knights. This is another deck I was really looking forward to in the Set 13 format, and it's a really, really fun deck. And honestly, after having tested it a ton, and guys, I mean a ton, I have played a lot of Royal Knights in the past couple weeks. I am probably gonna put this low tier 1.5, like somewhere around here, maybe, yeah, somewhere around here. Is it a tier 2-ish deck? I could see it being put in tier 2, like high tier 2, probably the strongest tier 2 deck. Is it tier 1? Absolutely not. It is on average not competing with a lot of these tier 1 decks. Now, do you have place for those decks? Yes. You've got access to a lot of cool toolboxy cards. You've got access to the same Alphamon that the Alphamon deck has. You can stop their Mirage or their Chaos Dramons or anything from attacking. Floodgating them out of a turn with Alphamon is probably one of your strongest plays to survive, and being able to do that multiple times with stuff like the Genku or add back off a Lord Knight or whatever is really, really strong. You've got a lot of things like the Lord Knight that can interrupt your opponent's turn by gaining memory. You've got a lot of big blockers, and then Omnimon is your crazy win condition. You can honestly get off an Omnimon like turn 3 or 4 on average is usually the quickest I've been able to do it. But just on average, this deck is very inconsistent. It does not cycle a lot. A lot of the games you lose because you just did not draw the pieces you needed. You didn't draw enough Royal Knights to stick under King Drazel. You didn't draw your Omnimon to be able to play out 4 guys. You auto lose to a lot of Floodgates, mainly Psychmon. So, and any purple deck is basically an auto loss for you. Like, even though you are playing cards for those matchups like Porcupamon, the BT13 Marcus, they just got too many ways to recur Cyclone. So I honestly don't think it's like very hopeful against any purple deck. Even stuff like Beelzemon could just tech that in, because why not? Like, you've got the room. So honestly, yeah, King Drazel, really, really cool deck, but I will probably just have to keep it in 1.5 for the time being. But anyways, guys, that is going to do it for the BT13 tier list. Here's your tier 1, here's your 1.5, and everything else that kind of doesn't matter as much. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.